The air in the old country club ballroom felt warm and thick, like a hug. It smelled of flowers and expensive perfume, with a little bit of champagne mixed in. Hundreds of tiny white lights were strewn from the ceiling, making the whole room glow soft and golden. Over in the corner, a band with a saxophone and a smooth-voiced singer was playing a song that made everyone want to tap their feet. This was the kind of wedding you see in movies, the kind where everything feels perfect. At the center of it all was the groom, a man named Leo. He was a guy who just knew how to be in a room. He moved through the crowd of friends and family like he was born to do it, shaking hands, clapping backs, and telling a joke that made a group of his older uncles laugh until they had to wipe their eyes. He had this easy kind of confidence, a big, bright smile that made you feel like he was sharing a secret just with you. He'd look over at his new wife, Clara, every few minutes, and his whole face would light up. It was clear to everyone watching that he adored her. Clara was the calm to his energy. Where he was a storm of motion, she was a quiet anchor. She stood near the head table, her simple but beautiful white dress catching the light. She was talking to her aunt, nodding and smiling, but her eyes kept finding Leo in the crowd. She had a gentle way about her, a kindness that people were drawn to. Her family had always been the most important thing in the world to her, and tonight was all about joining two families together. She looked happy, truly happy, but there was a little bit of wedding nerves in the way she kept smoothing out the front of her dress. Everything was supposed to be perfect. Her mom had spent a year planning this day, worrying over every little detail, from the color of the napkins to the exact song the band would play for the first dance. And so far, it was. It was better than perfect. It was real. The food was amazing. There were little towers of shrimp on ice and steaming trays of food being passed around by waiters in black vests. People were laughing, their glasses clinking together in a constant happy chime. The groom's father stood up and gave a toast, his voice a little shaky with emotion as he welcomed Clara to their family. Everyone cheered, and Leo squeezed Clara's hand under the table. He was beaming, the proud groom, the master of this perfect world he had built for the day. Everything was going exactly according to his plan. It was Clara's mom who started the trouble. She had been so excited all night, but now a little line of worry was etched between her eyes. She came up to Clara, who was still at the head table talking to an old friend. "Honey, have you seen the little blue pouch?" her mom asked, her voice low and urgent. "The one with your grandma's earrings?" Clara's smile faltered for just a second. "The little satin one? I put it in the top drawer of the vanity in the bridal suite, I think. I was going to put them on after the ceremony, but I forgot." "Well, it's not there now," her mom said, her hands twisting a small napkin. "I wanted to wear them for a little bit, to feel like your grandma was here with us." "The drawer is empty." The first little stone of worry dropped into Clara's stomach. "Are you sure? Maybe you put it somewhere else." "I'm sure." I had Clara, one of the bridesmaids, help me look. "It's gone." Just then, Leo came up behind Clara, putting his arm around her shoulder. "Everything okay over here?" he asked, his voice still full of that easy charm. He could see the worry on their faces. "What's wrong?" Clara explained about the earrings, trying to keep her voice light. "It's probably nothing. Mom's just being a worrier. I probably put it in my other purse. We'll find it." But her mom was already shaking her head. "No, I know I put them in that drawer. They were so beautiful, Clara. Little diamonds like teardrops. Your great-grandmother wore them on her wedding day." Leo's expression changed. The charming smile was replaced by a look of serious concern. He immediately became the man in charge. "Okay, let's not panic," he said, his voice calm and steady, a complete contrast to the rising panic Clara felt. He looked at his bride, his gaze firm and reassuring. "This is supposed to be our night. I'll take care of it." He turned to her mother. "Did anyone else have a key to the suite? Who was in and out of there?" His questions were sharp and to the point. He wasn't just asking. He was investigating. The little bubble of happiness around the head table had popped. The band was still playing, but their music sounded far away now. "We were all in there getting ready," Clara said, her voice quiet. "All the bridesmaids, my mom, my cousins." Leo nodded, his mind already working. Someone moved them, thinking they were putting them somewhere safe. It's a simple mix-up. He said it with so much confidence that for a second Clara almost believed it. But then she saw the look on her mom's face, and the worry came back. "Don't know, Leo," her mom whispered. "They were in that pouch. I'm certain." Leo's jaw tightened for just a moment, a flicker of something that Clara couldn't quite read. It was there and gone so fast she thought she might have imagined it. But his voice was all business when he spoke again. "Listen," he said, taking charge completely. "This is our wedding. This is about family. And someone, somewhere, has something that belongs to Clara's family. We can't just let that go. This is about respect. I'm going to find out what happened." He kissed Clara on the forehead. "Go on, enjoy your party. Talk to your guests. Mingle. Don't let this ruin our night. I promise you, I will handle this." Clara wanted to say no. She wanted to say it was okay, that they could look for the earrings tomorrow. That a pair of earrings, even if they were special, wasn't worth making a scene. But Leo was already moving away. He had that look in his eye, the look of a man who had a problem to solve. He loved being the hero. She had always admired that about him, but tonight it made her feel nervous. She had a bad feeling, a cold little knot forming in her stomach. Leo didn't make a big show of it. He didn't run around or ask loud questions. He just started to work the room. He'd stop and chat with a group of his college friends, laughing with them for a minute. Then he'd casually ask, "Hey, you guys weren't in the bridal suite earlier, were you?" He'd talk to one of Clara's cousins, compliment her dress, and then slide in a question about who she saw coming and going from the hallway. He was smooth, so smooth that no one seemed to notice he was questioning them. He was just being friendly, sociable Leo, but his eyes were missing nothing. He was watching faces, reading body language, looking for anything that seemed out of place. The mood in the ballroom was beginning to shift. The worry at the head table was starting to spread, like a crack in a beautiful vase. A few guests noticed the serious look on Leo's face as he moved through the crowd. They saw the way Clara's mom kept dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. The laughter in the corners of the room became a little quieter. The happy, celebratory buzz was taking on a nervous, humming edge. The music played on. A cheerful tune that now sounded strangely out of tune with the growing tension, and Leo, in the middle of it all, felt a strange sense of control. This was his moment. The wedding was beautiful, yes, but it was planned. It was expected. This was a real problem, a challenge, and he was the only one who could fix it. He was going to be the hero who found the missing treasure. He was going to expose the person who dared to bring a shadow of dishonesty into his perfect day. He scanned the room, his sharp eyes looking over the hundreds of faces, searching for the one person who didn't quite belong, the one person with a secret. He was a hunter, and he was absolutely certain he was about to find his prey. He had no idea that in his hunt for a thief, he was walking toward his own undoing. Leo moved through the crowd like a shark in clear water, sleek and focused. He had a mission. The happy, carefree groom from an hour ago was gone, replaced by a man with a purpose. He wasn't angry, not yet. He was collecting facts, building a case in his head. The beautiful music and the happy chatter were just background noise now. His entire world had shrunk to this one problem. A thief was at his wedding. And a thief, Leo believed, was a person who didn't belong. A person with a broken moral compass. He wouldn't let that kind of person get away with tarnishing what was supposed to be the most important day of his life. His mind started putting pieces together. The suite was on the second floor, a little away from the main chaos. Not everyone would have a reason to be up there. It was mostly the wedding party, the immediate family, and the staff. He started eliminating people in his head. The bridesmaids. They were all close to Clara, like sisters. They wouldn't do that. His own family? Absolutely not. The staff? They were professionals, probably with background checks. It had to be a guest. But which one? As he walked, he noticed a young man sitting by himself near a potted fern in the corner of the ballroom. He looked a little lost. The young man, whose name he thought was Ryan, was a friend of Clara's family. He hadn't come with anyone. He was nursing a soda, looking down at his phone. occasionally looking up at the party with an expression that seemed like a mix of awe and discomfort. Leo had noticed him earlier, during the cocktail hour, standing a little too close to the hallway that led to the bridal suite, just watching people go by. At the time, Leo had thought he was just shy. Now that shyness looked different. It looked suspicious. Leo drifted over to a table where a couple of his groomsmen were laughing loudly. He put on a friendly face, clapping one of them on the shoulder. "Having a good time, boys? Best night ever, man." One of them, his childhood best friend, shouted over the music. "Hey, quick question," Leo said, leaning in like he was sharing a secret. "You guys know Ryan over there?" The quiet kid in the corner. The best friend squinted. "The one by himself?" "I think so. I think Clara's mom said he's her second cousin's stepson or something. Real distant." "Yeah," Leo said, his voice casual. "He just seems a little off, doesn't he? I saw him earlier, just wandering around upstairs." A little seed of doubt was planted. His friends, who trusted Leo completely, now looked over at Ryan with a new, more critical eye. "You think?" The best friend started. "I'm just saying it's strange," Leo said with a small shrug, playing it cool. "A guy who doesn't really know anyone, showing up. Then a priceless family heirloom goes missing from an empty room. It's worth thinking about." He said it just like that. A simple, logical thought. He wasn't accusing anyone. He was just being a responsible host, protecting his new family. After he left his groomsmen, he made his way to Clara's parents. Her mom was still visibly upset, sitting next to her husband, who was trying to comfort her. Leo crouched down beside her chair. "Any luck finding the earrings?" he asked softly. Her mom shook her head, her lips trembling. "They're gone. I just know they're gone." Leo put a comforting hand on her arm. "Listen to me," he said, his voice full of gravitas. "I have a strong feeling about who it might be. I'm going to handle it." He looked her right in the eye. "No one disrespects this family on my watch. I promise you that." He was becoming the hero in this story, and it felt good. He was the defender, the protector. He could see the gratitude in her mom's eyes, the way she looked to him to solve this mess. It only strengthened his resolve. His next stop was the event coordinator, stressed-out woman with a headset and a clipboard. He found her near the entrance, talking to one of the waiters. "Excuse me," Leo said, his voice firm but polite. "I need to see the security footage from the second-floor hallway." "From about an hour ago." The coordinator looked at him, her brow furrowed. "Sir, I'm not sure we can do that." "That's for hotel security. I understand," Leo said, not backing down an inch. "But a very valuable item has been stolen from the bridal suite. This is now a serious matter. If you can't help me, I will need to speak with hotel management immediately." He wasn't asking anymore. He was telling. He used his height, his status as the groom, his sheer confidence to bend her to his will. "It worked. I'll see what I can do," she said, her voice now a little flustered. As he walked away from her, he felt a surge of power. He was in control. He had a suspect. He was getting evidence. The story was writing itself. He went back to Clara, who was now trying her best to dance with her dad, a forced smile on her face. The music had slowed down, and the mood of the whole party had definitely changed. People were whispering in small groups. The joy was leaking out of the room, replaced by a quiet, nervous energy. "Any luck?" Clara asked, her voice small. "I'm working on it," Leo said, his voice gentle with her, but firm in its purpose. "I have a theory. I just need to confirm a few things. Please, just try to have a good time. Leave this to me." Clara looked into his eyes, searching for something. She felt so torn. But Leo was so certain, so determined to make this right. He saw it as his duty. How could she argue with that? "Just be careful, Leo," she said softly. "Please don't make a scene." "I won't," he promised. "I'm just going to talk to him." He left her on the dance floor and walked directly toward Ryan, the quiet young man in the corner. Every step he took felt heavy and deliberate. He was closing in. Ryan saw him coming. His eyes widened a little and he sat up straighter like a student who had just been called on by the teacher. He smoothed down his shirt, a nervous gesture. "Leo, right?" Ryan said as he approached, trying to sound friendly. "Congratulations, man. This is a really beautiful wedding." "Thanks," Leo said, his voice cool. He didn't smile. He didn't sit down. He just stood over him, a slight but intimidating presence. "I wanted to ask you something, Ryan." "Okay," Ryan said, looking up at him. "Sure, anything. You were upstairs earlier, weren't you?" Ryan's face went a little pale. "Oh, yeah, I was looking for the restroom, and I think I took a wrong turn. I got a little turned around with all these hallways. I didn't mean to bother anyone." Leo watched him, watched his eyes dart around, watched the way he fiddled with his tie. It was exactly the behavior of a guilty person. He was a textbook case. "All right," Leo said, dragging the word out. "So you didn't go into the room?" "No." "Of course not," Ryan said, his voice rising a little in pitch. "That's the bride's private room. I would never do that. I just found the bathroom and came right back down. It was too quick to rehearse." "A lie, I see," Leo said, letting the silence hang in the air between them, thick and uncomfortable. He was enjoying this. He was enjoying the power he had over this scared kid. He was playing him, and he was winning. "Well, you see, the problem is that something very valuable was stolen from that room. And you're the only person who can't account for their whereabouts at that time." Ryan's jaw dropped. "Stolen what?" I don't know anything about that. I swear." Leo leaned in a little closer, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "Look, Ryan, I don't want to make a big deal out of this. It's my wedding day. Claire's already upset enough. If you just give it back, we can pretend this never happened. No police, no trouble. Just hand it over, and you can go on with your night. No one has to know." Ryan looked utterly horrified. His eyes were wide with panic. "I don't have it." "I don't know what you're talking about." Leo straightened up, a cold, knowing smile on his face. This was the denial he expected. "Fine," he said, his voice now loud enough for the people at the next table to hear. "If that's how you want to play it, but you should know I'm getting the security footage. And when I prove you were up there, you're not just going to be embarrassed. You're going to be publicly shamed in front of everyone you know. Is that what you want?" Ryan just shook his head, looking down at the floor, completely defeated. He looked so small, so helpless in his chair. To Leo, it was a confession. The poor kid was crumbling under the pressure. He had him. Leo stood up, his mind already racing ahead to the next step. He had to tell Claire's parents. He had to get the footage. He had to plan the moment of exposure. It had to be public, not just for the thief, but for everyone. They needed to see that this kind of behavior would not be tolerated. They needed to see him, Leo, the hero who stood up for what was right. He was saving the day. He walked back toward the main party, his heart thumping with a mix of righteousness and adrenaline. He felt like a prosecutor about to deliver his closing argument. He was so focused on his plan, so wrapped up in his own sense of justice, that he didn't see the way Clara was watching him. He didn't see the look of deep unease on her face. He didn't feel the way the whole party was holding its breath, waiting for something to break. All he could see was his prize. He had found his thief, and he was about to make him pay. The stage was set. All he had to do now was pull the trigger. He had no idea the gun was pointed squarely at his own head. The band finished its song with a flourish, the saxophone holding a long, sultry note that hung in the air before fading away. For a moment, there was a smattering of polite applause, but it was thin and weak. The party had lost its rhythm. The happy, flowing energy had been replaced by something thick and uncertain. People were still drinking, still talking, but their conversations were hushed now. Their eyes darted around the room, landing on the empty spot where the groom had been standing with the quiet young man, then flicking over to the head table where Clara sat, looking like a statue. The joy had leaked out of the room, leaving behind a ghost of a celebration. Leo, however, felt more alive than ever. The adrenaline was coursing through him, hot and sharp. He had just returned from the event coordinator's office. He had been right. The coordinator, looking pale and stressed, had confirmed that the camera in the upstairs hallway had indeed captured a lone figure, exiting the bridal suite and then disappearing into the men's room. It was grainy, of course, but the figure was the right height and build. He was wearing the same dark suit as Ryan. It wasn't a confession, but to Leo, it was a conviction. It was the last piece of evidence he needed. He wasn't just thinking it was Ryan anymore. He knew it was Ryan. He walked back to the center of the room, a man with a plan. He saw Clara's parents huddled together, their faces etched with worry. He saw his groomsmen looking at him with questioning eyes. He saw Ryan, still in his corner, looking like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. The whole scene was a mess. A beautiful, expensive mess that only he could clean up. A quiet apology in the corner wasn't enough. This wasn't just about a pair of earrings. This was about trust and honor and family. This needed to be a lesson for everyone. The thief needed to be exposed, not just punished, so that everyone understood the gravity of what had happened. And he, Leo, was going to be the one to deliver that lesson. He caught the eye of the band leader, suave older man in a shiny tuxedo, and gave him a sharp, decisive nod. Then he walked toward the center of the dance floor, right under the glittering lights. He picked up a small, empty champagne glass and a spoon from a nearby table. He stood there for a second, taking it all in. This was his stage then. He brought the spoon down against the rim of the glass. Clang, clang, clang. The sound was sharp and loud, cutting through the muted whispers of the crowd like a knife. Every head turned. Every conversation stopped. All eyes were on him. He could feel the weight of their collective gaze, and it was exhilarating. He was the sun, and they were all planets in his orbit. He waited for the band to stop playing, the last echo of the chime to fade into a profound silence. He let the tension build for just a moment before he began to speak. He didn't use a microphone. His voice, clear and confident, was more than enough to carry across the hushed ballroom.
Hello, everyone.
Can I have your attention for just one moment? He started with that charming, disarming smile, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. His eyes were hard, serious. I want to first thank you all, from the bottom of my heart, for being here tonight. He turned and held his hand out to her. Clara, who had been watching him with a look of dawning horror, felt a wave of nausea. She knew what was coming. She could see it all over his face. The room was a silent, suffocating bubble. She wanted to run, to hide, to scream at him, to stop, but she was frozen, trapped by 100 pairs of eyes. Her legs felt like lead. All she could do was get up and walk to his side, her movements stiff and robotic. When she reached him, he put his arm around her, pulling her close. His grip was tight, almost painfully so. It wasn't a loving embrace. It was a statement. He was showing her off, like a trophy, as he prepared to deliver his verdict. As you know, Leo continued, his voice dropping to a more serious, more intimate tone, tonight is about family. It's about joining two families together and building something new. It's built on trust, on respect, on love. He let those words hang in the air. And tonight, that trust has been broken. A quiet gasp rippled through the crowd. Clara felt her knees go weak. She put a hand on his arm, trying to silently plead with him, but he didn't even look at her. He was looking out at his audience, his people, his subjects. Some of you may have heard, he said, his voice full of carefully crafted sorrow, that a very precious, very sentimental item was stolen from the bridal suite tonight. An heirloom that has been in Clara's family for generations. He looked down at Clara, a picture of a grieving husband, something that can never, ever be replaced. He paused again, letting the weight of his words sink in. He was a master of timing. He let the guests absorb the crime, feel the injustice of it all. He was stoking their anger, their fear, their sense of violation. He was turning them into his own personal jury. I want to be very clear about something, he said, his voice hardening, shifting from sorrow to steel. This is not just about a piece of jewelry. This is about a violation. This is about a person who is among us, who we welcomed into our home tonight, who chose to bring deceit and theft into a sacred celebration. He began to walk, slowly, deliberately, pulling Clara along with him. He was no longer just talking to the room. His arm around Clara felt less like a support and more like a leash. "I believe," he said, his voice growing louder, more forceful, "that in a community and a family, we have a responsibility to one another. We have a responsibility to stand up for what is right. We cannot let this kind of dishonesty fester in the dark. We have to bring it into the light." His path was clear. He was walking directly toward the corner where Ryan was sitting. The young man looked like a deer caught in the headlights of a speeding truck. His face was ashen, his eyes wide with terror. He seemed to shrink into his chair as Leo approached, a god of righteous wrath descending from on high. "And I believe," Leo said, stopping right in front of Ryan's table, his voice booming now, echoing off the ballroom walls, "that we have a responsibility to protect the people we love from those who would do them harm." He looked down at Ryan, a look of profound disappointment on his face. It was the look a father gives a wayward son. "Ryan," he said, his voice losing its public speaker boom and becoming something colder, more personal, "I know you have them." Ryan looked up at him, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't," Leo said, holding up a hand. "Don't insult us. Don't insult Clara. I've already spoken to the hotel staff. I know you were the only one up there. I know you were in that room. The only thing we don't know is why." The entire room was dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. You could hear the hum of the lights overhead. Every single person was holding their breath, watching the drama unfold like a scene from a movie. Clara wanted the ground to open up and swallow her whole. She could feel the pity and the shame from 100 different eyes, all focused on this poor, terrified boy and on her, standing next to the man who was publicly destroying him. Tears of shame and anger pricked at her eyes, but she fought them back. She felt utterly powerless. "So, I'm going to give you a choice," Leo said, his voice dripping with a kind of smug generosity. "You can do the right thing. You can stand up and you can empty your pockets right here, right now, in front of everyone. You can return what you stole. Apologize to my wife and her family, and maybe, just maybe, we can find a way to forgive you. We can show you grace." He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper that was somehow louder than his shout. "Or," he said, "you can continue to lie. You can continue to insult us, and I will call the police. I will hand over the security footage, and I will personally make sure that you spend the next few years of your life thinking about the stupid. The choice is yours." He stood there, towering over Ryan, his arms still wrapped possessively around Clara. He looked out at the silent crowd, a king awaiting his subjects' surrender. He was so sure of himself, so drunk on his own power and righteousness. He had created the perfect villain, the perfect crime, and he was about to deliver the perfect, heroic resolution. He had orchestrated the entire play, and he was waiting for his final bow. But in that silent, suffocating room, in the space between a man's false accusation and a boy's terrified silence, a different story was about to be told. The spotlight Leo had aimed so carefully at his chosen scapegoat was about to swing around, blindingly, painfully, back onto him. He had thought he was the judge, but the real trial was just about to begin, and he was the one who was about to be exposed. The silence in the ballroom was a living thing. It was heavy and suffocating, pressing down on every single person in the room. All eyes were locked on the scene in the corner. The groom, towering figure of righteous fury, and the terrified young man shrinking in his chair. Clara felt like she was watching a car crash in slow motion. She was part of it, a prop in her husband's horrifying performance, and she couldn't do anything to stop it. Her face was hot with shame, not for Ryan, but for Leo. This was her husband, the man she had just promised to love and honor. his face a mask of pure panic. His mouth worked, but no sound came out. He looked around the room, his eyes searching for a friendly face, for anyone who would help him. But all he found were hundreds of eyes filled with a mixture of pity, suspicion, and morbid curiosity. He was a specimen under a microscope, and Leo was the one cranking the focus. "Well," Leo demanded, his voice cold and sharp as ice. "What's it going to be, Ryan? Are you going to do the right thing?" "I didn't." "That's your story?" He looked out at the silent crowd, as if to say, "Can you believe this guy? I'm giving you one last chance. Stand up. Empty your pockets. Or I'm calling the police." He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, his thumb hovering over the screen. It was a threat, a power play. The entire room was holding its breath, waiting for the hammer to fall on this poor, broken-looking boy. Clara felt a single hot tear escape and roll down her cheek. She wanted to scream at Leo to stop, to pull his arm, to do something. But she was frozen, a prisoner of his public spectacle. Just as Leo was about to pretend to dial 911, a voice, clear and steady, cut through the thick silence. "Leo, stop. Just stop it." It wasn't a shout. It wasn't a cry. It was a voice full of quiet, steely resolve. Standing near the back of the room, by a table of acquaintances from work, was a woman named Anna. She was a junior architect at Leo's firm. A quiet and incredibly talented woman who Clara had invited out of a simple sense of kindness. She didn't really know anyone else at the wedding, but she had come anyway. Dressed in a simple, dark blue dress, nursing a glass of water for most of the night. Now, she was standing straight, her shoulders back, her face pale, but set like stone. All eyes were on her. Leo stared at her, momentarily thrown off his game. "Anna, what are you doing?" "This is a private matter." "No, it isn't," Anna said, taking a step forward. Her voice was shaking, but her words were firm. "You're making a terrible, horrible mistake. And you're humiliating an innocent person." The crowd murmured, a low, confused sound. Leo's face hardened. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially not by a junior employee. "Anna, sit down. You have no idea what you're talking about." But Anna didn't sit down. She looked genuinely sorry, deeply pained. "Clara," she said, her voice softening for a moment. "I am so sorry. I never should have. I should have told you sooner." Clara just stared at her, her mind a blur of confusion and fear. What was happening? Leo stepped in front of Anna, trying to block her path. "That's enough," he hissed, his voice a low warning. "You're going to regret this." "I already do," Anna said, her voice cracking. She looked past Leo, her gaze fixed on the room, on the audience he had so carefully gathered for his triumph. She had to say it. She couldn't be a part of this lie anymore. It was eating her alive. "The earrings," she said, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "Leo has them." The word echoed in the silent room. Leo has them. It was so simple, so unbelievable, that for a second, nobody reacted. It was like someone had announced that the sky was green. It just didn't make sense. Leo let out a short, sharp, incredulous laugh. "That's insane," he boomed, turning to the crowd. She's obviously not well. She's had too much to drink. Pay no attention." But Anna was already shaking her head. "No, I haven't," she said, her voice growing stronger as she spoke the truth. "It's true, Clara. He took them. He took them weeks ago." Clara felt a cold dread wash over her, a wave so cold it made her teeth ache. She looked from Anna's desperate, honest face to Leo's furious, panicked one. And for the first time, she saw it. The flicker of panic she had seen in his jaw earlier, the tightness in his eyes. It wasn't the look of a man trying to solve a crime. It was the look of a man trying to cover one up. "Why?" Clara asked, her voice a small, broken sound. It was the only word she could manage. Anna looked at Leo with a mixture of pity and disgust. He was in trouble, she said. A gambling debt? A big one. He owed some very bad people a lot of money, and they were getting impatient. He came to me, asking for an advance on his bonus. I told him no, I couldn't. It was against company policy. She paused, taking a shaky breath. So he took them. The entire ballroom was a frozen tableau. The band members had put down their instruments. The waiters had stopped serving. Everyone was just listening, their mouths slightly agape. As Anna began to unravel the groom's entire story, "He told me they were replicas," Anna continued, her voice quiet but clear in the dead silent room. "He said you were going to get a real set, and these were just a stand-in until then. He said he'd sell them, get the cash to clear his debt, and then buy them back before the wedding. He said no one would ever know." She looked at Clara, her eyes full of tears. He made it sound so logical, so reasonable. He said it was a temporary fix. He's my boss. What was I supposed to do? I believed him. I helped him find a buyer. I feel sick about it every single day. The words hit Clara like physical blows. Replicas, a temporary fix. All those nights Leo had seemed a little distracted, a little stressed. All the times he had said he was just tired from work. It was all a lie. The man standing next to her, the man she had promised to spend her life with, was a complete stranger. The thief wasn't a shy boy in the corner. The thief was the man holding her arm, the man who had just orchestrated a public shaming of an innocent person to hide his own crime. Leo's face was a mask of pure fury. He looked like he might lunge at Anna. "She's lying," he roared, his voice cracking with desperation. "She's trying to sabotage me. She's unstable." But his power was gone. The hero was a fraud, and everyone in the room knew it. The jury had turned on him. To prove it, Anna did the one thing she could do to seal his fate. She reached into her small clutch purse and pulled out her phone. "I didn't want to believe he would do something like this," she said, her voice trembling. Her thumbs flew across the screen, and then she held up the phone for Clara and for everyone nearby to see. It was a text message thread. The name at the top was Leo. The messages were clear. "Need to sell the earrings. Fast. They're replicas. No one will know. Got the cash. We'll pay them back by the wedding. Then, a few days ago, lost it all. The debt is bigger. What am I going to do?" Clara stared at the screen, at the familiar words typed by her husband's hands. It was undeniable. It was the truth. The world tilted on its axis. The beautiful, perfect wedding, the loving husband, the happy futurette, was all a facade, a stage built on a foundation of lies. She felt Leo's arm drop from her shoulder. He was no longer holding her. He was just standing there, exposed. The confident groom, the righteous hero, the protector of the family, he was gone. In his place stood a scared, desperate man, trapped in the wreckage of his own creation. She looked over at Ryan, who was still sitting in his chair, his face wet with tears. He looked confused and heartbroken, and so incredibly relieved. An innocent bystander who had been nearly sacrificed to protect a guilty man. And then Clara looked back at Leo. He was looking at her, his eyes pleading, his mouth opening and closing, trying to form words that wouldn't come. He looked smaller than he ever had before, a king without a kingdom. The room was still silent, but now it was the silence of a courtroom after a verdict has been read. He hadn't exposed a thief. He had tried to burn a light on someone else's sin, only to illuminate his own. And now the whole world was watching. The silence that followed Anna's confession was different from the one before. It wasn't thick with tension or heavy with unspoken fear. It was a hollow, ringing silence. The kind of silence that comes after a storm has passed and you're left standing in the wreckage, staring at the sky, unable to comprehend what just happened. For a long moment, nobody moved. It was as if the entire ballroom, all 200 guests, had been turned to stone. Leo stood motionless, his mouth slightly agape, his face a shifting canvas of emotions. fury, denial, panic, and finally, a terrifying raw fear. He looked at Anna, then at Ryan, then at the faces staring at him from every corner of the room. These were his friends, his family, his colleagues. Their faces were not angry. They were not vengeful. They were just sad, disappointed, pitying, and that was 1,000 times worse. He had lost control of the story. He was no longer the hero. He was the villain. And the look on their faces told him there was no coming back from this. Clara felt the world come back into focus. But it was a different world now. The golden lights felt harsh and clinical. The beautiful room felt like a cage. She became aware of the weight of the diamond ring on her finger. It felt heavy, cold, and alien. It was a symbol of a lie. Every promise Leo had ever made to her, every I love you, every shared dream, was now tainted by this one horrible truth. She looked at him, really looked at him, as if for the first time. She saw the lines of stress around his eyes that she had mistaken for hard work. She saw the slight tremble in his hands she had thought was just excitement. She saw him for what he was, a desperate man, a gambler, a liar, a thief, and not just a thief of jewelry, but a thief of trust, a thief of dignity, a thief who had been willing to destroy the reputation of an innocent person to save his own skin. He opened his mouth, and a choked, desperate sound came out. "Clara, it's not. She's twisting it." It wasn't like that. But his voice was thin and reedy. It had no power. It was the sound of a drowning man. The confidence, the charisma, the undeniable presence that had drawn her to him was all gone. All that was left was a pathetic, blustering shell. "Ah, he's lying," he said, turning to the room, his voice cracking. "She's trying to get back at me because I didn't give her a raise. This is a setup." It was such a flimsy, ridiculous lie that it was almost insulting. His own best friend, the one he had been sharing jokes with an hour ago, couldn't even look at him. He just stared down at his hands on the table. Anna stood her ground, her phone still in her hand. "The texts are right here, Leo. All of them. Ask the police to pull my phone records. I'm not afraid of the truth. Are you?" That was it. The final nail in his coffin. Clara felt something inside her break. It wasn't a loud snap. It was a quiet, clean shattering. All the love, all the hope, all the future she had imagined with him just turned to dust. There was nothing left. No room for anger. No room for yelling. There was only one thing left to do. She slowly lifted her left hand. She looked at the beautiful diamond ring that had once represented a new beginning. She twisted it gently. Once, twice. Then, with a steady, deliberate motion, she pulled it from her finger. The sound it made when it hit the table was not loud. It was a small, soft clink. But in the dead silence of the ballroom, it sounded like a gunshot. A final, definitive end. She placed the ring on the crisp white tablecloth, right in the middle of the space where their plates had been. It glittered there, a lonely, meaningless spark of light. She didn't look at Leo again. She didn't say a word. She simply turned, her movements fluid and clear, and walked away. She walked away from the table, away from her stunned parents, away from the wreckage of her perfect day. Her high heels clicked softly on the polished dance floor, the only sound in the entire room. The crowd parted for her like a sea, her dress whispering against their legs. No one tried to stop her. No one knew what to say. They just watched her walk, a lone figure moving through a sea of silent pity. Leo stood frozen, his eyes fixed on that small, glittering ring on the table. He was so trapped by the sight of it that he didn't even see Clara leave. He heard the soft click of her heels on the floor fade as she reached the grand entrance. He heard the gentle whoosh of the heavy door as it opened and then closed behind her. And then he was alone. Not physically alone. He was surrounded by 200 people, but he had never been more alone in his entire life. The silence finally broke, not with a bang, but with a slow rising murmur. It was the sound of people turning to each other, whispering, the sound of judgment being passed. The sound of his life collapsing. Anna's shoulders slumped, and she sank into a nearby chair, burying her face in her hands. The band members looked at each other, shrugged, and quietly began to pack up their instruments. A waitstaff member came over and began to silently clear the half-eaten food from the head table. The party was over. The illusion was shattered. Leo just stood there, unable to move, unable to speak. He had wanted a dramatic ending, a moment of exposure where he was the hero. He had gotten his dramatic ending, all right. He had stood on a stage and exposed a thief. He just never, in his wildest nightmares, imagined that the thief was him. He had orchestrated his own public execution, and every person he loved had been a witness. He thought about his own father, a man who had taught him that your word was your bond. He thought about Clara's grandmother, a woman whose legacy he had tried to sell for a pile of gambling debts. He thought about Clara, whose beautiful, kind face he had just seen crumble into a mask of quiet, devastating heartbreak. The pain was physical, a crushing weight on his chest. He had wanted to be the hero so badly that he had become the villain. He had wanted to protect his new family, so fiercely that he had been the very one to destroy it. The ballroom was slowly emptying now. People were putting on their coats, their quiet murmurs filling the space where laughter and music had been. They were leaving with the most unbelievable wedding story they would ever tell. The story of the groom who tried to expose a thief and ended up exposing himself. Leo finally sank into the chair his wife had just vacated. He stared at the ring on the table. It wasn't a symbol of his undying love anymore. It was a monument to his hubris, a tiny, glittering testament to the fact that sometimes the person you think is your biggest problem is just a reflection in the mirror. And in his desperate attempt to point a finger at someone else, he had pointed 3 right back at himself. The wedding was over. The marriage was over. And as he sat there in the wreckage of his own perfect day, he had nothing left to do but finally face the person he had become. And it was a far more terrifying sight than any thief he could ever imagine.